You will face this moment. Eventually, every game master will face this moment. And that is when a player asks to do something that breaks the rules, the tone, or even the table's trust. And suddenly, all eyes are on you. Do you say yes and regret it later? Do you say no and worry you just killed the fun? If you've ever struggled with setting boundaries at the table, this episode is for you. Hi, welcome back to the Bearded Nerd podcast, where I help new players and game masters learn, play, and grow their love for tabletop RPGs. Today, we're talking about when to say no and how to say it, and how to protect both your authority and your players' enjoyment without becoming the fun police. We'll go through why to say no, how to say no, and when you should absolutely say no as a game master. Lastly, we will learn how to set boundaries in order to protect the story, the table, and the fun you're all there to share. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into this episode of the Bearded Nerd podcast. So, why is it hard to say no? Why is no so hard for game masters to say, right? It's the inverse of one another. But most GMs don't struggle with the rules aspect of tabletop RPGs. They struggle with the relationships. You want your players to have fun, to feel creative, and to feel heard. So when you say no, it can often feel like you're shutting down their imagination. But here's the truth. Saying no isn't about control. It is about clarity. A game with no boundaries isn't more fun. It's actually confusing, inconsistent, and eventually everyone is going to be frustrated. In my opinion and in my experience, rules and boundaries aren't walls. They are guidelines. They're guardrails, if you will. And this comes from personal experience. I, for a period of time, allowed players to pretty much adopt any 5E rule. It could have been official. It could have been a homebrew from Instagram. It could have been a third-party creator. I allowed it. And it was the biggest mistake. I didn't say no when players asked me because I didn't want them to not have fun. But what ended up happening is that it threw the balance of the game from both a role play and a combat perspective. So it jarred everything. And then other players weren't having fun because a group of players, about 2 or 3, were so min-maxy overpowered that they did everything and the rest of the party did nothing. They literally just twiddled their fingers and they couldn't do anything, which made me feel horrible because I felt like I robbed them of their fun. So again, rules are boundaries, and those boundaries are guardrails, right? Those rules, those boundaries, everything is there to help maintain order, which will help maintain fun. And just like I said earlier, that not every idea deserves a yes. There are moments when saying no is not just allowed, but it's necessary. So number 1, when it breaks table trust. If an action undermines another player's agency or enjoyment, that's an opportunity to say no. So for example, if there's PvP without both parties agreeing to it, if there is interpersonal stealing from party members, right? So one party member wants to steal something else. And if there is intentional derailing of scenes that others are invested in. The second is when it breaks the tone or genre of the game. If you're running a campaign that is more heroic fantasy than casual comedy, a joke character built for chaos may not fit. If you're running an actual play campaign that you stream every week, you may not want to have the overtly serious character who steals all the attention either. Tone is part of the social contract, and when the social contract is broken, there's no trust between the players and the GM. Third, when it creates long-term problems, it's necessary to say no when long-term problems could be created due to certain actions. So if a ruling will haunt every future session, just stop it early. You could say sure, but, and then focus on something else, but sometimes saying no at the moment will prevent regret later on. Number 4, you need to say no when it makes one player the main character. If an idea overshadows the rest of the table, it needs an adjustment. Fairness matters more than flashiness, so to speak. So how do you say no in a way that matters? The best way to approach it is the delivery. The no or saying no isn't the problem. The technique that you say no with will preserve fun and respect if you say it in a way that is respectful towards the person. Very obvious, I know. So number 1, yes, but, or no, because, right? Instead of saying, no, you can't do this, first and foremost, try no, because that breaks the tone we agreed on. Or yes, but it would come with a serious consequence. Providing that context turns rejection into collaboration, which then allows that player to be more willing to work with the rest of the party, and it redirects that energy. In that context, also be sure to explain why. Briefly, you don't need a lecture, but they need clarity. A simple reason builds trust, right? No, you cannot do that, or hey, no, we don't want to go that route because XYZ, right? So you could also mix it up where you say, hey, at this moment, I'm going to say no. And my reason for saying no is because ... The way you explain it will provide that simplicity, but also will not break your trust with them and vice versa. It will actually build more trust. From there, you can offer an alternative. Redirect the energy. Don't crush it necessarily. Instead of saying you can't remove the king in a violent way, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you can try to say, hey, why don't you try to expose him or frame the king or undermine the king politically? Just because by doing XYZ actions, there are going to be some severe consequences that I'm not sure your party is ready. Every Friday night, I run a Star Wars 5e game, and right now the players are trying to plan and ascertain certain things in the character arc, in the story arc rather. And I'm running into this same example, same instance where the party wants to go blasters blazing into a particular area. And I've had to tell them, you can do that, absolutely, but here are the consequences. I laid down the consequences and I laid down the explanation. I gave them a reason why they may not want to do it, which was mostly because if they enter combat, they would not survive due to the reasons that I provided, which were they're very paranoid NPCs, XYZ connections that they have with other mafia gang-related individuals, so therefore it would just be harder. It would be a slog of a combat. And then what I did is I offered alternatives. I gave them 3 options: that they can talk and negotiate peace with them, they can ally with them, or they could just simply avoid them, right? And that consistency, because I've done it in the past before where I've explained a situation. I even said out of character, which I love that term. Hey, y'all, out of character? XYZ explanation. It builds trust. And that consistency actually allows you to build even more trust. My biggest complaint with folks is that when they're inconsistent, that inconsistency kills authority faster than saying no ever will. So, if a rule exists, enforce it evenly, including your favorite players. Now, all this can be avoided by setting boundaries before the problems happen. The easiest no is the one you never have to say. So, set those expectations in session 0. My session 0s, I have established boundaries. There's no PvP unless both parties agree to it. So, you may want to set up those boundaries for PvP, whatever it may be. You're going to want to set up the tone in the genre. Talk about the campaign. What are you trying to achieve? Go from there. Whatever that is, you have to set it up in, quote, black and white. From there, talk about those character concepts. Talk about the lines and veils, whatever it may be, but you have to say it out loud. And confirm with the party that everyone's in agreement that if something or someone crosses a line, that you will all pause and adjust. Establishing that early establishes your authority clearly, right? You're not going to be an authoritarian, but you need to be clear. Everyone else is having fun. Whether you are running a paid service for a game as a game master, or you're establishing a casual campaign from out of your game store, you need to be clear on how you're running your game. You make rulings in the moment and you can keep playing, sure, you can do that, but you need to make those statements clear. You got to tell them early enough, hey, I will do this, throughout the game, throughout the campaign, where I might have to make a ruling in the moment, ... But this is how we do things normally. And one thing that I want to make sure you understand is it's okay to course correct. Normalize it, in fact. Remind players that you can always adjust something next session, right? Make those boundaries feel flexible and not necessarily rigid. Because if they feel rigid, then people are going to not have fun. They're going to feel like they're stepping on eggshells at all times. So make sure to just make that as flexible as possible. And one thing that you should be aware and you should be prepared for is pushback. Sometimes players will push back, and that's okay. But you need to know how to handle it without escalating tension. So there's 3, maybe actually 4 things that I would recommend. First and foremost, stay calm. Be neutral, stay calm. Your tone sets the temperature for the entire table. Second, separate the player from the idea. Tell them you're not rejecting the person or the player. You're just considering the action may not be suitable for the table. So again, you're separating the action from the player. Number 3, move the game forward. Once the ruling is made, continue play. Don't linger, don't debate, because that will drain the energy. And if they want to do that, say, and which is number 4, talk after the session if it's needed. Those complex issues deserve a private conversation and not an argument across the table. Remember, saying no doesn't make you a bad GM. It makes you a responsible one. Boundaries protect the story, the table, and the fun you're all there to share. When players trust that your rulings are fair, consistent, and made with the group in mind, they don't resent your authority, they rely on it. Before I let you go, I really want to take the time to say thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit that subscribe bell icon or button, depending on the platform that you're listening to, and you will be notified when you hit that subscribe button with all future episodes. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Dungeon Soap. Dungeon Soap is a handcrafted, American-made, fantasy-themed health product. They make soap, beard oils, and all sorts of other products that are considered clean. They are considered vegan. I personally love using them. I have a bunch of different scents that I enjoy, but the Paladin themed scent, which ironically is my favorite. So go ahead and check out the link below in the show description notes where you can shop to your heart's desire and use Bearded10 to receive 10% off your entire order. And if you want a printable guide for all the phrases and boundary frameworks and things like that we've discussed on this episode, be sure to check out Patreon for the GM Boundaries and Rulings Toolkit. Until next time, remember to protect your table, trust your judgment, and sometimes the best yes starts with a respectful no. God bless, and as always, folks, keep gaming.